Welcome to the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, the podcast by filmmakers for filmmakers.
This episode is sponsored by Gemini Crown Tech, software for all of your production needs. Stay tuned for more information later in the show. Hello, everybody. This is the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, and today we are talking music, motion, renewal, the soul, all those wonderful things. We have filmmakers Ryan Hartsell and Scott Berman. They've got an incredible new animation out called Resolution, so I'm really excited to chat with you folks about this. So, guys, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
So just to set the context for the audience, let's start with you, Ryan. Describe what Resolution is all about.
Well, Scott's gonna jump in on it to be better on this, but
That's fine.
it's about overcoming obstacles and finding empathy and connection to other people.
And Scott, what's your pitch?
I'll just give a little background of it. It's a 45-minute immersive experience based on an album by the Polyphonic Spree. And it's done by it's based around a story that sort of centralizes from a campfire, and each person at the campfire, each song of the album is sort of dives into the mind of each individual at the campfire, and they sort of collectively overcome, like as Ryan was saying, these obstacles in life, and that's what it's about. It's about overcoming things. It's about realizing the things that you have to overcome, confronting them, meeting them head on, and ultimately getting through them, and looking at other people for help and helping other people, and that's the basics of it. When this project started, the Polyphonic Spree is the band. This new album called Salvage Enterprise, well, it's been out for 2 years now, but called Salvage Enterprise, is really a heartfelt, emotional album that tells a great story on its own. The history of that and how this project started was, I did visuals for a band called Tripping Daisy in the 90s with Tim DeLauder. He was the singer. Tim and I are best friends. We've grown up together since 7th grade. And, after that, Tripping Daisy, we had always talked about doing a planetarium film. And just recently, Tim created this new album, and he had been touring it across the West Coast doing these pop-up listening experiences, just with people sitting around, a campfire. So that's where we kind of came up with the idea to do that in a dome experience and then tell these stories based upon that. And that's sort of the basics of how it started.
Interesting. And Ryan, what's your background? How did you get involved in filmmaking and animation and storytelling?
So I've been involved in VR since the early days of this new round of I was at an animation studio, Real Effects, and on the side I was always making films. So they're one of the early adopters to Oculus before Facebook bought them and everything like that. So they got in all the dev kits and stuff like that, and they came to me and said, "Hey, you want to figure this out for us?" So I helped develop the VR department that became engulfed in part of what became Flight School Studio at Real Effects. But I developed workflows on and off set for live action VR, running the gamut. I've spent years shooting around the world for that. And then also I have an animation background. So I've started developing VR and stuff like that for animation. And recently with this project that Scott was starting, he actually, the whole campfire scenario, he, through other people who mentioned my name, brought me in to talk about helping him shoot that. And then I started asking, I was like, well, what are you doing for the rest of this stuff? Do you have workflows or pipelines, or, how are you managing all these other artists? And he was like, so then I was like, well, I could help build that for you. So then we started teaming up, and then, it's just, we fill each other's holes, and we come together, and it's been a really cool process because, Scott has a long realm of business and marketing and all this kind of stuff that I don't have that same aspect, but I bring a technical realm to this as well as a creative. I was a creative director over at Real Effects Flight School for almost a decade. So that's where I'm coming in on this as far as that goes.
Well, I'm curious, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but sometimes I like to get into the weeds. But for a project like this, and we'll stay with you, Ryan, what is that workflow? Because I've never had someone on the show that's done this type of a project before. So I'm curious, what's the workflow like, and is it different than, say, an animated feature or traditional animation? How does the VR and all that kind of work together?
Yeah, well, so my VR background informed me, but there's still a lot to the hemisphere that's still different. You have to think about your composition in a whole different way. You're especially if you're capturing a lot of times 180 degrees is what the field of view is for the dome space.
And let me interrupt you real quickly, just so the audience can understand the context. What would be the venues where this would play? I know, we talked about the dome space, but where would people watch this film ideally? And what in how many different ways?
Well, the primary way is going to be your planetariums and dome theaters, which are in almost every city or around the country and
Gotcha.
around the world. There's how many dome theaters are there
There's
around?
about 1,700 in the world that are over 100 seats each.
Yeah.
So
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 there,
that's our target.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're in the Omni Theater. I don't know if you've ever heard of that in Fort Worth. It was one of the original IMAX theaters. And Cosm, who is I don't know if you've heard of Cosm Studios, but there's one in Dallas and there's one in LA, and they built these giant domes sort of after this, you know, after the Sphere had done what they did, and they're more sort of sports venues, but they outfit all these other planetariums, and they're going back and redoing these planetariums, like the Omni Theater in Fort Worth. It's a 8K LED dome
Wow.
that's it's 300 people.
And
Um,
and for a project like this, do you do you pitch it to the dome? I'm trying to figure out what the business model is. Do you pitch it to these to it like a distributor that does dome theaters first, and then you go make the
there,
film, or you
there's
just how does that
yeah,
work?
there's lots of different ways to do it. There's a model that's sort of a takeover model where you go in and you rent the whole space out and you sell the tickets and you do the ticketing, um, you know,
Just
in
like
basically.
just like four walling for an indie film or something.
Yeah,
exactly. It's the roadshow model of old indie film, basically.
yeah. And then as far as then there's some really good distributors out there. We've got some offers, but we haven't done that yet just because we're sort of working through the business model. So there's either rev shares or there are licensing agreements or full on takeovers or just flat fees for shows. Um, but we like the rev share model because it really puts us in a partnership with the planetarium or the museum. And that's what we're doing with the Omni. We have 300 shows there.
Wow.
The SAT in Montreal, starting August 5th, which is a real cool one. And then there's another model that's like Cirque du Soleil pop-up model where you actually tour domes around, in different cities.
So you actually bring the venue with you city to city.
Uh-huh.
That's interesting. Well, circling back to the artistry of the film, and we can stay with you, Scott. I mean, I'm a big fan of out of the box animation, from Yellow Submarine and Fantasia, and I even remember going to see Heavy Metal with my friends, ages ago. So I'm curious
Or you're at
when.
the top of the list. Yeah. Yeah.
So what? How do you when you have an idea, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this question, but I've got it now. When you have an idea like this, how do you design the look of the film and the production design of the film? What inspires you to make the choices you make for this kind of movie?
Well, I think the music inspires it, first
Right.
and foremost, especially with a piece like this, and then really I wanted this to be like a bunch of different art styles, some that I may like more than others, and some that other people may like more than others, because it's really telling individual stories from people. And they're quite different. What you might think in your mind or picture in your mind is quite different than what I would. So, so we went out, and basically the first thing I did was hire a bunch of artists that I'd used their work before in Tripping Daisy or in Polyphonic Spree, and that I just really loved their style. And if they really loved the music, then we could move forward. And if they didn't, if they kind of liked the music, it was, well, I don't think this is for you. You know, because Ryan will tell you this too. And when you're animating something and you're working on something for 8 months or a year, and you're listening to that song 10,000 times, you're going to grow tired of it unless you really love it. And if you really love it, you're sort of never finished with it. A project like this, because you fall in love with it and you're like, gosh, I could just. And once you see it on a dome, once you see your work on a dome like that, there's nothing like it. There
Wow.
Mhm.
really isn't anything like it in the world. Um, Outside of being in the sphere, which is a dome, right? But once you see that, you fall in love with that. So basically, I just went and hired these other artists, and I gave them some leeway to infuse their own style and what they do the best, and wasn't super concerned about whether the one style matched the other style, because they all came together with a common thread through the campfire, and that would be the thread that sort of tied it all together. So it wasn't, it was more about the transitions from one thing to the next than the styles.
And Ryan, is there a learning curve with, say, the animation team when it comes to where the film is going to play ultimately, or does that play into it at all?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to consider the format, like where it's going to play, how it's going to play, like in anything you create, honestly, like, where's the end goal and work backwards from that. A lot of the animators that we were working with and by the way, Scott and I animated one of the songs ourselves in there too, and like we helped kind of do some stuff. But a lot of the other guys that we were working with, we kind of created an environment for them to do what they do and what they're comfortable with, instead of trying to ramp them up into the learning curve. The hardest part is getting down the distortion model of this stuff. If you
What
don't
what
just
what does that mean?
so taking a flat image and making it look correct on a dome, it has to be distorted unnaturally to look natural when you're in the dome.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
How,
huge problem with taking basic artists that we chose, which were like artists that have been doing video work and all flat, whether it's 3D or not, it's in a flat world, a 16 by 9 world. And we took those artists, and at first we tried to get them to understand how to make things rap and make things work in the environment, that the end goal that it needed to be in. And that didn't really work. And like Ryan was saying, we went back to saying, you operate in your space, give us all the layered files of whatever program you're using, and we'll take that, and then we're going to make it work in the dome. And so you have everything from Fantasia style hand drawn animation. You saw the movie, so like in that first scene, it's all hand drawn stuff that's taken into another program and wrapped. And then you have everything from that all the way to like the ending that was done in a 3D program where there's a camera in it to where it's already distorted. And there's one where the kid sticks his hand in the water and has this one underwater sort of trip that happens. And that one was created in a program called Quill, which is where you're actually in a VR headset in a empty room, hand drawing in three-dimensional space. So we used everything from flat to 2D cell shaded animation all the way up to the latest programs in three-dimensional world.
And live action shot traditionally, shot with the 360 camera and then shot with the Intanaya 250-degree field of view lens.
There pretty much isn't any other way to do. I mean, we
And,
did
and,
everything.
what are you delivering? Is it still like a DCP of some kind? What do you deliver to the venue?
No, they require H.265 files. Most of them do. So
Interesting.
we don't have a DCP of it.
Like
And
what you saw where there was the round footage, that is exactly what we send them.
Oh, interesting.
So everything that's at the bottom of that round footage that you watch is in front of you, and everything's at the top of that sphere is behind you, and the other stuff is on the sides.
That
That's
is
why the
wild.
focal point's small in that space. And that's another thing, just to talk about technical things of how you teach somebody to, if I were to do a traditional close-up where on your face, I might crop in and see, not see the top of your head or even your chin to get a real tight close up. Well, if you think about that wrapped in a dome, the lips would be in front of you, the eyes would be behind you. So you have to take that round space or that space and really operate a close up as about half of a quarter of the space because
yeah.
that's gigantic in front of you.
So
So that's the hardest part of it for people to understand that.
a lot of the lensing, like if you're shooting the lensing, you have to put the lens 90 degrees to simulate the dome for a fisheye. So the ball, the convex lens, the top of the lens is straight up. So looking straight out is actually, if you flip the lens sideways, it's the bottom quarter of the lens is your point of interest. So you have to shoot essentially kind of straight up or at an angle to get the shot that you're looking for instead of shooting traditionally straight ahead.
That is crazy. And so with that kind of palette, what techniques do you, if you want to draw the viewer's attention to one part of the frame or the other, I guess you can use pretty much any frame, any part of that image you want, I guess. Or does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, typically in the spaces in the theaters, like you're not in swivel chairs, so it's not the same as like say VR where I could like turn around and like I could really follow a 360. Where this is more of a neck tilt or your peripheral vision side to side.
Gotcha.
It's more of your playground as far as
And
like
so you end up like traveling through spaces where stuff goes around you, or you end up like showering you from above, 360 around the audience,
Interesting.
taking different.
And what's the response been like so far? I know you had a big splash at South by, did you not?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We
Yeah,
we ended up taking the audience award for the first time for a dome inside the Fairmont. We actually erected a dome inside the space.
Oh, you actually built a dome at the Fairmont Hotel.
yeah,
Yeah,
That is cool. And
yeah,
was that just this past South by?
yeah, yeah.
That is awesome.
yeah. So that the you know when you first start this, you kind of have an idea of what you think people might like, and then you show it to your friends and your family, and they're biased, so they're giving you the best opinion possible, and then I just remember the first time Ryan and I walked in the theater. It was a Friday, and we were about to show it to my family, and then we had a show that night, and we're like, "This is it." We had just made edits the day before, and we made edits the day after, and the day after that, and the day.
We're
So,
still making edits.
but it was like, all right, this is it. This is what we're going to show. Let's watch this without being critical, and let's just watch it. Try to feel like you're an audience member and see how what we think about it. And we felt good about it, and then the first group of people come in, it was sold out. It's in a theater in Denton, Texas, uh, at the Sky Theater Planetarium at the University of North Texas. And I'm watching people watch this show for the first time, paying customers, and they're staring at the screen and nobody's moving or nobody's reacting. And I was sort of having a Larry David moment where I was like having this panic attack. It's like nobody's smiling, nobody's like, are they liking this? Oh my God, they thought it was going to be like Avatar, like we charged too much money. Oh my God. And then I kept watching them, and I noticed throughout the show, I was like, wait a minute, nobody has looked at their phone one time during the entire show. And that was a good indication, that calmed me down a little bit. And then after the first show, everybody clapped, walked out, and everybody started coming up to me. And this kid came up to me, and this was like, I tell this story over and over and over because it was like a pinnacle moment for all the work that we had put into this, and it was this kid. He was like 15 years old, and he walked up to me and he said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I really needed to see this today."
Wow.
And I looked at him. I was just kind of didn't really grasp the gravity of it. And I said, "Oh, thanks." He goes, "No, you don't understand. I struggle with mental health issues, and now I know everything's going to be okay. Like that's how much I needed to see this today."
Wow.
And he hugged me, and I hugged him. And it was just like, that was the moment for me. I was just like, man, I mean, whatever happens next is great, but this moment is like why we did this. It made me feel like there was a bigger purpose for it to really help people and heal people and, teach them things and just, and we learned a lot from it in the process of it. I
Yeah.
learned how to be a better director than I'd ever been and to let people do more, to give them a lot more space and, trust people, hire the right people. So it's just been a growing experience and in South by Southwest, you still, even though things are happening well, and we got accepted into South by Southwest, and that was great, but we didn't know what was going to happen down there. And the moment the doors opened, it was this big flood of people that came, and we had lines wrapped around the building. We weren't even like prepared for it. And we sold out every single show every day within the first like 15 minutes. And we had a standby line, and we were just blown away. We met so many great people down there, and it's just catapulted us into a different, arena than we've been in before, or at least for me. And it's been really rewarding just to see the people that are in this space and how cool they are. And, this is the first film that I've ever done, although I've been doing immersive experiences with bands since 1990, but this is the first film that I've done in this space at all, and so to see these other artists and how everybody's willing to, it's like a really cool community. People are really willing to share things. They're helpful. They're hopeful for your piece, just like you are for theirs. Um, and just recently we're finding out next week whether we're going to make a nominee for the Emmys.
Oh, nice.
We're in consideration. We're on the top 13 out of for the emerging media outstanding emerging media program. And so we find out next week if we made it to the top 5 and we're officially nominated.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Like that's happening. That's been
Fingers-
great.
Fingers crossed. We'll see. But
Well, it's a terrific film, and I wish you guys the best of luck with it. Before we wrap up,
Sorry about my voice.
No, you're-
I'm sick the last couple days.
you're good. Tell the audience how they can hear more about the film, learn where it's going to be screening and so forth. Ryan, is there like a website or a social media campaign where people can learn more about the movie?
yeah, actually Scott did the website. So
Resolution.film.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, guys,
and it's showing right now in the Omni Theater in Fort Worth. It'll be in the SAT in Montreal. It'll be in Florida at the Dolly Museum in the spring, and we'll be launching it in planetariums. And we're actually also in the Apple Vision Pro.
and Portland, we're going to be at Portland.
Yes.
do you have the dates on that yet?
Well, we're in the festival there. On our screening is on the 6th.
Well, awesome. Well, guys, it's been fun chatting with you. It's a wonderful film, and circle back as it gets out to the world. We'll chat again.
All right.
Yeah, love to.
That sounds great, guys. Well, take care.
Thanks, man.
This episode is sponsored by Gemini Crown Tech, owned and operated by Stephanie Moore and Stephanie Harrison. We at Gemini Crown Tech have covered all your production management needs with our proprietary software. Please visit our website at www.geminicrowntech.com and use the code FMP for Filmmaker Mixer Podcast listeners, so we know how you heard about us.
Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, a podcast created and hosted by filmmakers Jeff Stolen and Andrew Lamping, and produced by Melody Lopez.
Our theme song was composed by Stephen D. Bennett.
Make sure to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and stay tuned for future episodes.